Here we go. I'm already laughing. Alrighty. And play.
You know, expectations are funny things, particularly when you happen to be a movie critic whose job it is to offer some kind of informed prediction on the quality of upcoming projects. Sometimes expectations can lead you down completely the wrong path, ending in crushing disappointment when said project doesn't live up to your lofty anticipation.
Very true.
And on even rarer occasions, the thing you confidently predicted would crash and burn quicker than the fucking Hindenburg turns out to be a lot better than you expected. But then there's the ones that end up exactly where you said they would, making every dumb mistake you expected, falling for every tired and predictable cliche you warned about, ignoring and contradicting every aspect of the source material just as you knew they would, and pushing every heavy-handed piece of social commentary with the regularity of a fucking atomic clock. Which brings me neatly along to the Rings of Power, one of the most anticipated shows of 2022.
This reminds me, I gotta
by
watch Andor after this.
I mean fucking dreaded, because basically anyone with an IQ higher than the She-Hulk writing staff could see exactly the way the winds were blowing on this one, and they knew what this show would become. And now that I've suffered through 6 entire episodes, which have slowly trained my will to live, I feel like I've got a fairly good sense of what the Rings of Power actually is. This show is a billion-dollar nightmare. A horrible, bland, disrespectful, corporatized piece of clumsy fan fiction.
The last show was good, though.
Both obnoxiously overproduced
That's
and
bad.
shockingly cheap at the same time.
The only
written
one
by
was good.
people with a Wikipedia summary understanding of the source material and an even weaker grasp of actual human behaviour, featuring some of the worst dialogue ever uttered in the history of entertainment, and performed by a diverse cast of activists. Sorry, actors, who range from way too good for the material to way too shit for any material. In short, it's the perfect storm of shittiness on a grand scale that we all predicted it was gonna be. And it feels like it's getting worse with each passing week. I mean, I could probably devote entire videos to picking apart the terrible writing, amateur performances, ham-fisted direction and clumsy allegory for each and every episode, but since other people have already done that far better than I could, I'm gonna do my best to give some kind of overall summary of this fucking disaster. So grab your sword and vomit bags, fellow traveller, and let's begin this journey together. The general storyline is set sometime after a destructive war against an evil dude named Morgoth who tried to take over the worlds. Who exactly was Morgoth? What did he look like? And why was he even doing this? Don't know. Because it's not important. What is important though is his second in command, Sauron, who took command of Morgoth's armies and then promptly disappeared. I mean, he wasn't defeated in battle or anything, he just kind of gave up and went away. Why? Don't know. It's a mystery, you see. A mystery neatly contained within a storytelling box that'll presumably be opened at some point in the future. Yeah. But don't worry, we'll talk about that kind of shit later. Believe that! Anyway, this is where our story picks up. It's divided into several different plot threads told from different perspectives to give the impression that this is some kind of epic, complex narrative, but the main storyline thread follows a character that happens to have the name Galadriel, because that's about as much as she has in common with the actual character from Lord of the Rings. This time around, she's a brutal, obnoxious, ass-kicking, sword-swinging warrior woman who's the physical equal of any man, because this show has to reflect the world we live in today. Anyway, she's been scouring the earth for clues to Sauron's whereabouts for the past few centuries. Not exactly Sherlock fucking Holmes, this one. And naturally, everyone's getting a bit fed up with her by this point. I know the feeling, guys. I've been with her for about 5 minutes and I fucking hate her already. Her own squad decide to mutiny after following her all the way to the North Pole, and who can blame them when she's willing to leave one of them behind to die of exposure rather than stop and camp for a few hours.
Commander! Wait, no! We keep moving!
Also, why do none of these people actually look like elves anymore? Anyway, she's eventually forced to return to her superiors without completing her mission to find Sauron, but they're like, nah, it'll be fine. I wonder if this strong female character trying to warn her incompetent male superiors of an unresolved danger will ultimately get proven right.
No way!
Anyway, they try to pack her off to Valinor because even though they haven't seen her in years, they're already sick of her shit. But then she bails out at the last second and decides she's going to swim back to Middle-earth across the Sundering Sea without any supplies or flotation aids, because that's a thing you can totally do. But then, wouldn't you know it, she gets rescued by a dashing stranger who's totally not Sauron, so that the rest of the plot can happen. Wow, what are the odds that she would happen to bump into a bunch of strangers on a raft in all these thousands of square miles of empty ocean?
What a stroke of luck!
So anyway, eventually they wind up on the island of Numenor, which is ruled over by diverse queen lady, because this show has to reflect the world we live in today. Anyway, Galadriel finally figures out that Sauron is headed for the Southlands by reading a map. Now, you might assume that being thousands of years old and having scoured every corner of Middle-earth already, including the Southlands presumably, Galadriel would be pretty familiar with its geography now, but apparently not, because a character's only ever as smart as the person writing them. So naturally she needs to gather an army and get to the Southlands so they can lay the smackdown on Sauron and his orcs, and for this they're going to need the Numenorians. And naturally she decides that the best way to win their cooperation is to act like an arrogant dickhead and treat everyone around her like
I
shit.
feel like I've seen something like that before.
It swept me to this island for a reason, and it will not be quelled by you, Regent.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Yeah, it's a total mystery why audiences are failing to connect with this character. Anyway, because we need the rest of the plot to happen, diverse Queen Lady agrees to send Galadriel and not Sauron to the Southlands along with 300 men to put an end to the threats. Fucking really? 300 men is barely enough to garrison a single town, never mind invade an entire country. And let's be real here, they're not exactly sending their A-team for this one. Why is this army composed almost entirely of skinny teenage boys and girls in plastic armour that look like they've never swung anything heavier than a Wii motion controller? Why are there no actual men in this medieval fighting force? Oh wait, of course, it's because this show has to reflect the world we live in today. I'm sure this 100-pound girl's gonna strike fear into the hearts of orcs everywhere.
Looks like meat back on the menu, boys.
Anyway, the second strand of this narrative follows diverse elf warrior and strong female healer in the Southlands as they follow up on worrying reports of trouble in the local area. See, these people sided with Morgoth back during the war, and ever since then their country's been under foreign occupation to make sure they don't start getting the wrong idea again. So needless to say, they're not exactly enthusiastic about having elves on their doorstep. And wouldn't you know it, an entire army of orcs
He reminds me of the
residents
dude that
there
played the
without
main
being noticed by
vampire.
anyone, led by evil elf guy who's planning to take over the whole country, which forces strong female healer to
Underworld.
become strong female
think
leader
that was
and rally
him,
the
maybe,
local
too, yeah.
villagers to fight them off. Because if there's one person that I'd absolutely trust to make good tactical decisions in a war situation, it's the local florist.
That is wonderful.
The final strand of this story follows a group of psychopathic Irish hobbits, Harfoots, as they migrate across Middle-earth, led by Lenny Henry, because this show has to reflect the world we live in today. But you better hope you don't fall behind, or break the rules, or say the wrong thing, or just happen to be in the wrong place when something totally unconnected goes wrong, because these fuckers will just leave you behind. And along the way, female Frodo runs into not Gandalf when he literally falls out of the sky, and then she spends the next few episodes trying to figure out who he is and where he comes from. And all of this stuff culminates in an action sequence to bring about the creation of Mount Doom and Mordor that may be one of the dumbest things I've ever seen outside of a Roland Emmerich movie. Volcanoes do not work like this. Where the fuck do I even begin with this show? I mean, first and foremost, I guess I have to say that the writing is absolutely atrocious in all respects. The dialogue is an unholy mixture of overly dramatic trailer lines that have almost no bearing on the situation at hand, songs and iconic speeches shamelessly stolen from characters that won't be around for thousands of years, and pretentious pseudo-philosophical ramblings that sound like a 13-year-old trying to scribble something profound in their Tumblr profile.
Do you know why a ship floats?
Shut up! Jesus Christ, characters even say okay on multiple occasions. Did anyone even bother to proofread this shit? The characters themselves are a collection of absolute idiots who fail to understand very obvious clues until the script decides it's time to move the plot forward, consistently act and behave contrary to their own interests, change their minds on the flip of a coin, act surprised by things that they absolutely should know already, and generally fail to display any measure of common sense, level-headed thinking, or logical decision-making. Like, at one point, Galadriel and not Sauron get brought before diverse queen ladies so she can decide what to do with them. The Numenorians don't want her there because they don't like or trust the elves, and Galadriel doesn't want to be there because she needs to get back to Middle-earth. So it seems like the solution should be obvious here. Put her on a fucking boat and get her out of there. But instead, they come up with this ridiculous decision where they'll spend the next couple of days deciding her fate, and in the meantime she's basically allowed to wander the island at will. How the fuck does this in any way translate to the situation that preceded it? The answer is, of course, it doesn't. It's done because the script needs the rest of the plot to happen, and the writers couldn't think of a way to integrate their plot with the world that it's supposed to exist in, so they just said, fuck it, let's just do it anyway. And naturally, because it's a modern day production, the male characters fall into one of two camps. They're either corrupt, selfish manipulators, or benign, unthreatening beta males who know their place and never show even a hint of agency. And oh my goodness, could they possibly be setting up the one heroic man in this show as the enemy that Galadriel's been searching for all this time? The girls, on the other hand, are either strong, capable, decisive go-getters who take charge of every situation and do things their way, or pure-hearted paragons of virtue with hidden strength just waiting to be revealed. You know, tropes like this are so tiresomely predictable that it basically gives away the plot of the show just based on which characters have been put into which situation.
Yeah, at this point,
Galadriel
with
is
everything
probably
going
the worst
on,
offender
you
in
see
all
it
this
coming.
shit, which is a bit of a problem since she's the closest thing to a protagonist that this show has. She's arrogant, short-sighted, confrontational, and completely disinterested in the well-being of others. She's happy to let the men under her command die for no obvious gain, makes grandiose, self-serving speeches to people that she needs to win over to her cause, callously manipulates and emotionally blackmails others to doing what she wants, and generally acts like a spoiled, entitled arsehole. I don't think I've ever rooted for Sauron so much in my fucking life. The thing is, all of this sounds supremely negative because that's my assessment of her character. The show, on the other hand, desperately tries to frame her as the hero because in the minds of the writers, this is exactly what strong, empowered women are supposed to act like. She's not arrogant and callous, she's decisive and pragmatic. She doesn't manipulate people, she helps them to find their true purpose. Or else. She's not entitled, she just knows what has to be done, and everyone else needs to deal with that. It's so funny when writers try to frame villainous characteristics as virtues, and weirdly, it seems to be happening more and more these days. It doesn't exactly help that Morfydd Clark possesses an acting range that makes Brie Larson look like Katharine Hepburn. She can do an angry scowl with the best of them, but anything beyond that is like watching Seth Rogen trying not to be a complete twat. You can practically feel the internal struggle going on. There's an extremely telling scene where she's riding a horse along the beach, and I think she's meant to be conveying wonder and exhilaration at being close to nature again, but instead she looks like she's desperately trying to hold in a shit. Oh, help my bob, I'm touching cloth here. You can also tell that these writers used to work for Bad Robot because the script's got J.J. Abrams' grubby hallmarks all over it. Basically, sustained through the constant deployment of mystery boxes. And what was he working on in his Fortress of Solitude? Who is the stranger? What's the purpose of the magical bullshit sword? Who is Adar? What was What's in the box? Will Galadriel learn more than one thing before the end of the season? Is Isildur's sister actually hot? Or is it just her big boobs? These are all ongoing questions that the show teases to try and keep the audience invested, rather than
you're killing me, man. You're killing me.
Care about. It's a cheap and dirty style of writing, and the show's absolutely riddled with it. And the writing's not the only problem here. The direction, geography, and chronology of this show is absolutely fucked. Like in one scene, we're showing events that unfold over a period of weeks or even months, and then in the very next scene, we're back with a different set of characters, and only a couple of hours seem to have passed since their previous scene. Ships are able to sail from Numenor to Middle-earth, a journey of almost 2,000 miles in a matter of days. What timeline are we supposed to be working to here? Don't know. In another scene, strong female healer and diverse elf warrior have gathered the local villagers together in a fortress at the edge of Mordor. Lacking the numbers to hold out in a pitched battle, battle, they instead lure the orcs inside and then collapse the tower on top of them.
Yes.
Holy shit, they did something remotely smart. That should buy enough time for you guys to escape. Good job. But then instead, they go back to their village inside Mordor so they can make a stand there instead. What the fuck? So you're telling me that an unfortified village with multiple approaches is a better place to defend than a literal hilltop fortress that can only be accessed by a single narrow path? I mean, at least that might have negated the enemy numbers and give you a fighting chance. Also, how
Like
the fuck did
300.
you even get back to the village without being seen by the other orcs? You must have walked right past them to go back the way you came. And even if you managed to repel an enemy attack, do you really think they're just going to give up and leave you alone? All they're going to do is regroup and keep coming at you. Unless your goal is to hold out until help, which you know is coming, eventually arrives, this isn't the kind of battle that you're going to win. It's almost like they read the script or something. There's no sense that the writers and directors understand the geography of the place they're describing, or the size and disposition of the opposing forces, or even how battles should logically play out. So it's impossible to tell how this battle's actually progressing. I mean, the villagers seem to kill a lot of orcs with ambushes and carefully laid traps, but there's nothing to suggest that another big group won't conveniently come running out of the woods as soon as the plot needs them to. And if they don't know or care about this stuff, then why should we? The set designs and visuals range from excellent to Sci-Fi Channel original with no explanation for why. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely some magnificent landscapes and cities to be found here, but then simple things like a warg attack in a forest look like absolute dog shit. Some of the sets in Numenor look like they were put together about 30 minutes before filming started, and I don't know man, for $60 million an episode, I'd expect an hour-long feature film every week, and I'm just not seeing it. Probably shouldn't have spent all that money on intimacy coordinators, should you? Now, it's no secret that Rings of Power is a diverse show. I know this because it's been at the forefront of basically every piece of advertising and marketing that's ever been done for it. But it does create problems that I don't think the showrunners really considered, like how there's basically nothing to distinguish one human faction from another halfway around the worlds. Game of Thrones had a very diverse cast, but it was smart enough to hire actors that fit with the geographic location they were set in. People from the north tended to be fair-skinned because it's cold and dark most of the time, while people from southern regions like Dorne had a more Mediterranean look, while off to the east in desert lands like Essos, you had Middle Eastern and African actors because it made sense that people would look that way in such a hot climate. Basically what I'm saying is that people from certain areas tended to look a certain way, and it helped you to tune into the fictional world that was being presented to you. Here though, any nation or faction can look like basically anything, so none of them have any sense of identity. What exactly does a typical southerner look like? I don't know, because based on what I've seen, they could be Caucasian, African, Middle Eastern,
everybody lives
Asian.
everywhere.
How did such a diverse range of different ethnicities end up in such a small, isolated rural settlement? Don't know. It doesn't matter, because this show has to reflect the world we live in today. This show has to reflect the world we live in today. This show has to reflect the world we live in today. This show makes me want to murder myself. The secret that Tolkien was a huge fan of allegory in fiction, so truly he would be absolutely thrilled at what they've done here. Like in this scene where an angry young white man rants at a black man about letting the past go. Or this scene where an angry old white man rants about immigrants coming to take all their gerbs. Or this scene where an arrogant white man dismisses the concerns of a female subordinate. Bit of a pattern emerging here, isn't there? It's also clumsy and on the nose and desperate to push the message. They might as well have the characters break the
That was a
fourth
different
wall and
one.
just straight up explain to the audience how this all relates to current issues facing our society. But I guess when you're an activist first and an artist a distant second, none of this stuff is going to faze you because all that matters is getting your point across. Truly, Tolkien would be proud of what you've done here. The Lord of the Rings books were an incredible, epic, timeless story of friendship, sacrifice, adventure, courage, and conflict, crafted by one man's boundless imagination, passion, and love for mythology and fantasy, and tempered by a long life of experiences, hardships, triumphs, and horrors. The Rings of Power, by contrast, is a cheap, clumsy, derivative copy commissioned by a company that thinks it can buy its way into cultural relevance, made by people without imagination or passion, people who have never been moulded by experience or hardship and have no well of creativity to draw upon. In fact, to paraphrase Tolkien himself, Amazon had slowly shaped it to their shifting purposes and made it better, as they thought, being deceived. for all those arts and subtle devices for which they forsook their former wisdom, and which fondly they imagined were their own, came but from Tolkien, so that what they made was not only a little copy, a child's model, or a slave's flattery of that vast imagination which suffered no rival and laughed at flattery, biding its time,
After this,
secure in its pride and its immeasurable strength.
Go away now.
Anyway, that's all. I
knew he was ending it on that. Good Lord, man. Well, that's been dismantled. On to the next one, huh, Drinker? Holy shit. What he said. What he said, man. Oh, man. It is what it is, though. I review this stuff, and I'll continue to watch this world burn. Oh, man. It is what it is. I don't like watching it. Don't like watching the world burn, but it is what it is. You know, with me, this series is just, it's been boring. That's it. It's been very pretty and boring. Reminds me of this particular chick that I dated. My God, she was gorgeous. But I was so bored. So bored. And I've never been bored talking to any woman that I've dated. Except for her. It was just this whole stereotype of the gorgeous chick and nothing but rocks in her head. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Every chick that I've ever dated had a brain. But this one, like, holy shit. She wasn't blonde, though. Like, she wasn't the full stereotype. But it was just, that's what this is kind of like, man. It was just like, oh, this is very gorgeous, but I'm so bored. The last episode was the one that I liked. You know what I mean? I really liked that. But anyway, go subscribe to The Drinker. Tell them Tyrone Magnus sent you. And if you enjoyed my reaction, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share. 10 million subscribers. Woo!